why you may suck at commitment. Commitment phobia, a fear of commitment, it's a big thing for most people. Now, whilst I don't really know why you may suck at commitment or why commitment is really challenging or difficult for you, I will share a personal story from me, from my life. And many men may relate to this, but not only men, women as well. So I grew up in a fairly dysfunctional family. There was definitely love there. There was definitely some level of, we care for each other, but the way that was shown was really confusing and it was volatile. I grew up in a violent family. I watched and observed my parents hate on each other day after day after day. They were violent with each other, physically and emotionally abusive. They were isolated from each other. They didn't really show affection and depth of care. And when they did, it was far and few moments in between. And it was super confusing. And so before I go a little more before I go into more detail around what did that actually look like for me and what did that represent and what were the personal experiences with that, let me just speak a little bit to the general childhood experience and how we develop as children into adults and how we form ideas and beliefs, because this is really important, but I'll be super brief. We grow up observing everything in our environment, particularly from the ages of 0 to say 12, but there are developmental stages within that larger developmental stage. And we begin to make assumptions on what life is meant to be like, how we're meant to be, what we're attracted to, what we're repelled against, what we don't really like, our values, what makes us happy, what makes us sad, what we deserve, our self-worth, and how our sense of deservability is literally formed during these years. And so if we are exposed to confusing or volatile experiences, or if we're exposed to unsafe environments, this can massively inform how we see ourselves, see others, and think we should be in relationships as adults. And that can be super, super intense. And in that intensity, we're always looking to protect ourselves because we feel unsafe. Now, most of the time, we're attempting to protect ourselves in unconscious ways. We don't even know we're doing it. And so when we're young, when we're maybe 4 years old or 5 years old or 7 years old, we form these protective strategies. And these are protecting the parts of ourselves. You see, in parts therapy or Gestalt style therapy or archetypical work or internal family systems work, when we're looking at the parts of the psyche, generally what happens as children, if we have one traumatic experience, and most of us have many, right? But if we have one traumatic experience or a singular experience, what happens in that moment is the psyche almost just shifts away a little bit. It compartmentalizes that experience in order to not have that particular singular experience affect the rest of the mind-body experience. And it's not a fracturing per se. It's not a split, because that's multiple personality disorder. That's completely different. But it's a compartmentalization. And then what the mind does is it assigns these soldiers to protect that part of us that really experienced abuse or pain or hurt or a feeling of not feeling safe, not being safe. And then it assigns these soldiers, and one particular soldier, a sergeant maybe, that is the protector of that part. And we carry on that habit neurologically. It deeply embeds in the grooves of our brains, but also behaviorally and emotionally. And so then what happens is that protective strategy, anytime we're in a situation that is similar to that old protective strategy comes out because it's been tried and proven, tested, it comes out and it does its thing. An example would be this. As a child, as a young child, like 4 or 5 years old, I would watch my parents argue and fight relentlessly with each other. They hated each other in those moments. That's what it felt like. And so a protective strategy for me, I would run to my room and hide under my bed. Now, obviously as an adult, I wouldn't do that. But what I would do is I would shut down internally, and in my own mind, I would run away in my own mind. And as a teenager, what I laid over that was a protective strategy of being aggressive and being the aggressor and being abrasive. And so what would be happening in my adult relationships, I'd be shutting down inside, but externally I was being loud. I was being aggressive and abrasive. I was being angry. That's what my father was, and I even saw that in my mother as well, that aggression. And so these are how sometimes these protective strategies are formed when we compartmentalize these experiences that we have. And so for me, I witnessed parents that didn't really care for each other, but they stayed in relationship. And I would also hear my mother constantly speaking about divorcing or leaving my father and sharing that with me as the eldest son. And then there was enmeshment and entanglement there. Now, I say all of this not to blame my mother or father, not to throw blame on them. As a child, I didn't understand this. As an adult, I get to. So I get to release the feelings, I get to feel the freedom, I get to do the work around that because that's my responsibility as an adult. So I'm not throwing blame or shame on them in any capacity. I'm giving you an example of what it looked like, and it may resonate with you, it may be familiar to you. So I'd hear my mum speak about divorce and separation, I'd hear my father slander my mother, but they stayed together. And that was confusing. And so I developed a belief that, well, if you're together in a relationship, this is what it looks like. It's you're meant to fight, you're meant to argue, there's meant to be conflict. I would always hear my mother say, if it wasn't for you two boys, I wouldn't be here. My freedom was taken away from me when I was a child, when I married your father, and all of these things that they would say and share with us in their own anger, in their height of their rage. Now, as a child being very impressionable, that was intense. And I made that mean that, well, all relationships basically are just shit. And all relationships, all you do is argue, and there's tension, there's pain. Well, I don't want that. So I often believe that I don't want children, I don't want relationships, I don't want commitments, because I would also hear my father all the time worrying about the bills and worrying about money and paying the house down and all these existential logistic things that happen with family. But how he met that and how they met that as a unit was not cohesive, it was separate. So it didn't make any sense to me. So as an adult, of course, I wanted intimacy, I wanted to share, I wanted connection, I wanted sexual intimacy, and I wanted depth. But I was also really scared of it. Unconsciously, I'd formed these beliefs that being in a relationship restricts one's freedom. And committing in a relationship is even worse. And so as an adult, the way I would deal with that is I would be unfaithful. I would have multiple sexual partners, but I wouldn't be sharing that with my partner because I just thought, well, that's okay to do. I formed these erroneous beliefs, these silly beliefs. I shouldn't label them. They weren't silly. They were unhealthy beliefs because I was unable to access my wounding and my trauma, and I was also unwilling. Parts of me were unwilling. My protectors within were very strong. And so it wasn't until I really started doing inner child work, deeper inner child work, that I was able to shift my response and my understanding to what does it mean to be in a relationship, in an authentic, genuine, committed relationship? And must it take away my freedom? Must it really shatter who I am as a person? Must it take away my individuality? Because I experienced that, witnessing that with my mother. She would just be constantly scared that her individuality was being taken away from her, her expression, so she rebelled. And I did that. Now, I'm not excusing my behavior and saying it was my parents' fault. It's my responsibility. So I stepped into that responsibility, started doing the inner child work, started working with those parts of myself, started seeing a therapist, seeing a counselor, working with energy healers, working with shamans, doing my own deeper inner work, being in greater solitude and being with self and really understanding who I was. And I made a decision to stop. Just to stop coming from old conditioned beliefs and behavior. So I started examining all of that. And that could be a reason why you are struggling in commitment, because of the experiences you had. If you're one of those people that is constantly chasing the sun, is constantly looking for a new adventure or novelty, can't be grounded, doesn't feel just comfortable in their own skin, is going from partner to partner, is only after short-term casual, short-term gratification, non-committal relationships, struggles when you're in an argument with a friend and think, well, we're in an argument, boom, I'm out of here. This friendship's not for me, or this relationship's not for me. If you experience that on a regular basis, that's a pattern for you, then maybe it's worth investigating and maybe it's worth looking into, because you may have this fear of commitment. Now, you can go ahead and do my love block assessment. It's a free assessment. You can go to my website, growwithsteph.com, and you can find an assessment that will help you identify what your core fears are in life as an adult and in relationships. And this can be really, really important. What essentially prompted me to go on this journey of reflecting deeper and looking deeper into my own self was, it was a catalyst of a relationship that I was in a number of years ago, where she found out I was unfaithful. And seeing her and the pain that she was in and all the shame and all these old memories that came to me, it just placed me in a position that I can either continue this path that I'm on and be deeply insecure and mask it with false bravado and a facade of confidence and aggression, or make some changes and delve deep into what is this thing that is me and where's it really coming from? Where am I really making my decisions from? And so you can do that assessment, but importantly, you have an opportunity to do that deeper inner child work. And that's powerful. My wife and I run level 1 and level 2 inner child workshops throughout the year, and it's a powerful way to connect with other like-minded, like-hearted people that are in this work, bringing the best of them, choosing to bring the best of themselves forward in the world, as you can too. You'll be supported, you'll be seen, you'll be witnessed, because often these child parts of us that are locked in our unconscious psyche, they are not seen at that moment of inflicted pain. The fear that they experience, they lock those memories away. And sometimes we just need to be seen, witnessed, understood, appreciated, heard, accepted, respected. And until we start respecting ourselves and really looking at our patterns and the pattern of the peaks and troughs that we experience in our sense of well-being, in our sense of self-worth, in our happiness levels, if these peaks and troughs are massive and they're extreme, it's telling us something about us. We're avoiding something and we're stuck in cycles of pain, and we're trauma bonding with these experiences and with these specific type of relationships that we are playing out. Yeah. You're not alone, and you have an opportunity to go deeper. You really do. Yeah. I'll be here for you. I'm here to support you on your journey. I've learned a great deal through my life, and my service and my mission and part of my purpose and who I am in this world now is to help people liberate themselves from themselves. And it's a constant thing. It's a constant work in progress, a constant effort and attention in progress. It doesn't stop. Power and blessings to you. I'll see you soon.